Technology Tools. Hello and welcome to Language Technology Tools. My name is Maureen Lamb and let's get started. So I will be sharing my screen with you so that you can see my presentation. Okay. And we're going to present. Okay, so today we'll be discussing technology tools for the language classroom. If you'd like to follow along by looking at the presentation URL is http://tinyurl.com/languagetechtools. So the first thing I always get when I talk about technology is, why use technology? What's the point? How does that help us? And the reason why to use technology is as a supplement to learning, not a substitute. So students are very engaged with technology. They're always on their phones. They're always using different technology on their computers, and they're always plugged in. So technology is a good way to reach students. Also, technology can enhance the learning experience. You can take something that you currently don't use with technology and transform it to be even better with technology. And what I hear from a lot of people is, I know I can use technology, but I don't know how to apply it to my classroom. So these are some of the ways you can structure a class with online tools. For example, you can have homework assignments that are turned in online, such as through Google Drive, Google Documents, or by using Dropbox. You can create online assessments such as Google Forms. I find these to be very helpful, especially as an entrance quiz, an exit quiz, or even as a homework assignment. You can also review online with Kahoot, which I'll talk about later. It is what has made multiple choice the most fun thing for my students. You can have collaborative notes on Google Drive and just plain notes and collaborative work on Google Drive as well. So a little bit more in depth about Google Documents. So one of the things I do with Google Documents is use them for collaboration. So for example, I can assign each student a color, so they have different colors to demonstrate what they contributed on essays, for scansion, short answer questions, all sorts of things. Also for some essay planning, I have them do Google Documents. I also have them do reflections on essential questions for my AP course. I have students do IDs on a Google document, have them select IDs they do, and that way all their identifications are shared with the class. I have students also translate on Google Documents. So what I do is I double space the text for them, and I have students each translate the Latin text into English in a different color font, keeping the Latin text and translating beneath. Then I require students to do 3 or 4 comments on each other's sections to make sure they have read through their sections. These comments can be corrections, they can be noting difficult grammar, they can be talking about different references in the text, or they could be talking about figures of speech, or such as alliteration, tricolon crescens, things like that. And they can make other references to Roman culture if they so desire. And so I'd like to show you what I do with my students. So here is an example of a Google document I've done with my students. And as you can see, I have it in the different colors. And I also have these comments on the side. And these are all comments that I did. And so they are just describing what each thing is. And so as you can see, we have different people commenting. And the way you comment is you highlight a word and you press the comment button up here in the corner. That's how you add a comment. And so I found this to be extremely helpful. And that way, when students are studying for a test, they can just go back and look at all the Google documents. It's really awesome. It really works well. Okay, so Google Documents are great. And Google Forms I've been using more and more this year. And you can create multiple choice questions, free response questions, true or false questions, or short answer questions. I often use it as an entrance exam to make sure students did their homework. And I have used it for an assessment when I cannot be there. I've put the questions on a Google form. That way I can see the timestamp when they submit it. And so hopefully they do it during class. I've also used it a lot more this year for homework assignments. So I'll have students do an assignment, and then when they come to class, we will discuss it. And then that night for homework, before they start the next assignment, I'll have them do a quick assessment just to be sure they're on the same page. And again, these will range from multiple choice to free response to even a short essay outline. And that way I can look at it and give them feedback. I've also used it for exit tickets. So at the end of class, I will give them a quick 5-question something or other, maybe multiple choice, maybe free response. And that way they can fill out the form and then leave, just so I know they are paying attention, they understand what's going on. I've also used it in lieu of other paper quizzes, and that actually has worked out pretty well. And so this is what a Google form would look like when you're using it. And so here you can see that you title it, and I just titled quiz, and you have different options. So if you go to edit, you can create multiple choice questions, a paragraph text, check boxes, choose from a list, a scale, a grid, and then the date and time. Those are all interesting options. And you can also shuffle the option order for multiple choice. So if you have students taking a quiz that's multiple choice, you can shuffle up the answers so they won't copy each other, hopefully. And after students are finished with it, then the responses will be emailed to you. All right, so that's really helpful. And I found it to be especially helpful to check to make sure that they have completed their work at night. Google Hangout. Obviously, if you're watching this, you probably know how to do a Google Hangout, but it's something I've been using more and more. And I think it's a really helpful thing. It's great for snow days, sick days, or extra help sessions. I even taught a course online this summer using just Google Hangout and our learning management system. So that's how I got to see the students. And I would do largely what I'm doing now is I would share my PowerPoint for each day's lesson with the students, and then they would ask questions or comment on that PowerPoint. And another great thing I found, especially when I was doing it this summer, is before we would meet, I would create an event on my Google Calendar and add a video call to that event so that all the members of the group can have the video call link beforehand. So if I sent out an event invitation to my students and said, we're meeting at 10 a.m., they would all have that beforehand so they could join the call early or just know what the link was if they got logged out, just so they'd have the link to that Google Hangout. And as you can see, you can share your screen, you can use Google Chat, and use effects. And when I've done this with my larger classes, especially my class of 16, I tend to use Google Chat, the group chat on the side. As you can see, you can get it to the left if you click on the chat box. And the neat thing about that is when you have so many students that it's hard for everyone to talk, then one student can say, I have a question on the side, and they can either type out their question or they can speak and people know who is talking. So that's been a real plus. And I think it's better if fewer people speak at once. So I often ask my students if maybe only 2 or 3 at a time are speaking, everybody else should turn off their microphones. It's not always bad, but sometimes it can get overwhelmed. And something my students like to do are use the effects on Google Hangouts. So they like to give each other crowns and all sorts of things. And you can see on the side of Google Hangout, there's some really interesting effects there. Of course, not as academic, but it's something fun for them. So something else I use with the students, well, I've used for myself and for my students, is blogging. And so this year I had students write blog entries as if they were Gauls encountering Caesar. I had them write these blog entries in English about the Latin they had read. They were responding to how Caesar was describing the Gauls. And so I thought that was really interesting. I've also had students finish the story. So I had them read the story of Pygmalion and Galatea in Ovid's Metamorphoses, and have them write a blog where they are describing their experience as Galatea, waking up suddenly from being a statue and being with this guy Pygmalion, and the students had great fun with that. Also, I've used it in the AP course for having students to relate to essential questions. And so I've given them questions on the reading that are broader and deeper thinking questions, and then students will respond on a blog. I've also had my younger students journal in Latin, which is difficult for them, but they seem to have a good time with it. And in general, it's good for reflecting. And I've had students write more reflections this year. And so as a reflective process to talk about what they feel they understand, what they feel they don't understand, what they feel that they should be improving upon, and what they feel could be better about the class. And those are all things they could talk about in the blog setting. I also blog for professional development. Now, I haven't updated this in a while, but it has a lot of really good technology tools for the Latin classroom if that is something you're interested in. And so this is neat because you can organize it by labels. So I've organized it by labels of comprehensible input, conversational Latin, DeBello Gallical battles, Facebook group flashcards, flipping the classroom, form practice, Latin apps, etc., etc. And so this is great so that if you see my blog, you're able to go in there and search what exactly you're looking for. And so that's been a really neat tool, and I will definitely be doing more of that in the future. And I found that to be a really nice way to share things with people. So the next thing I want to talk about are maps. So as language teachers, we often use maps to kind of get our students into the idea that we are studying another culture, they are in a different place, and try to get them familiar with the geography of that place. And so something I've been using lately is purpose games, because in lieu of the old map quiz, this is actually really neat. So I will show you that. So for example, this is a map of Caesar's Gaul. And so it will ask you questions in Latin, or you can ask them in English or whatever language you would like. So this says, where is Helvetia? And so if you press on the right answer, oh, the wrong answer, it goes boing, 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 and it starts making things red if you click the wrong answer. Now, if you click the right answer, it turns green. And so this is really neat because you can just go through and click the green ones, and the kids really like it because they like to see right away how they're doing. And I always tell the students that if they can beat my score, then I will give them an extra credit point. So I do it very fast to begin with, and then they try to beat my score. So they have a lot of fun doing that. And this is a great way for them to review because they do it over and over again. As you can see, I have 423 plays, and I only have 20 students who have done this map. So it's really fun, and they really learn their maps really well for the quiz and as they were reading Caesar. So I think it's a really valuable tool. So another thing I've been using a lot more this year are YouTube videos and other videos because I think they're really interesting. So for example, there's a TED Ed video about the Four Sisters in ancient Rome. And it's a really nice, sweet cartoon, and there's a lot of good TED Ed videos out there. So I would highly recommend that you look through and see what works best for you and what you can use for your classroom. Another thing I use are online biographies. So instead of having students read an article, I might have them watch a video clip on a documentary about Julius Caesar rather than having them read an article. And that's better than me talking too, because then they can come in and if they have questions, we'll go over everything again, but they already have some background knowledge to draw from. There's also a wonderful Latin site called Latin Tutorial, and it has a channel on YouTube. And these are great ways to review grammar, declensions, conjugations, etc. And I'll often have students watch these after we've gone over something in class just to kind of reinforce what we went over and so that they can feel more confident and come to me if they have any questions. Vimeo is another good place to look for videos. This Latin language hunt is really neat. And I found a couple of other Latin videos. There's one where they're interviewing people in a train station in England in Latin. So that was really neat. And I think there's a lot of different language videos on there. So if you can play around, there's a lot of interesting things there. So I highly recommend that. Additionally, I have this great resource called Edpuzzle. And Edpuzzle, excuse me, it is a place where you can find educational videos, you can store them and have students go find them, but you can also add quizzes, add notes, add things that you want students to look at. And so that's been really helpful. So I'll have students maybe watch part of a video and stop it where I want them to stop and ask a question, give them an example, maybe give them a quiz. And so I think that's really very valuable. Another thing that is great for education, or just about anything actually, are video notes. So if you have to watch a video for something, this is a video service where you look at the video and you can take notes on it, and it actually timestamps the notes so you know exactly where in the video you are taking that note. And I know some of my students have trouble when they're asking questions because they don't know where they got the question from in the video, and that takes this away. So something I watch with my students is Mary Beard's Rome, and so if they have a question on part of that, or if they have a question on a documentary watch on the Celts, they can go back and see where they took those notes and where that question might be. There are many, many vocabulary tools out there for world language teachers. The one that I find to be the best is Quizlet. And I don't have a paid account, but if I were to have a paid account, I could create flashcards for my students. I could have students share flashcards with me. I could view student progress. And so I've been seriously considering that. Another thing I really like about Quizlet is they can create flashcards with pictures. And there are also fantastic quizzing games. And so one of the things I like about using pictures is that they're associating the word in Latin, not with the English word, but instead with a picture. And so I think that's very valuable. Another site you can use is Study Blue. And that also has flashcards with pictures and can include pronunciation. And it also has some quizzing opportunities and worksheets now. So that's a really interesting site. And with any of these sites, really, the best way to do it is to go through it and play with it and see what works for you. And lastly, there's also Quia, which has a lot of stored materials. Quizlet does too. So if you look up your textbook, you can usually find Quizlets or Quias or even Study Blues that people have already made. So you don't have to do too much. But I think it's really neat, and there's a lot of shared activities on Quia. Review tools. So I said I was going to talk about Kahoot, and this is one of the things I wanted to talk about. It is fantastic. You can do a survey, and I believe you can do an open-ended question as well where students can write in responses. But the really neat thing I found is that it has made multiple choice so much fun for my students. You have students answer on their computers or devices, and they answer the questions. I make it anonymous by having students pick a name. So for example, I have them pick characters from Harry Potter, creatures from Greek mythology, their favorite sports star, things like that, so that there's less pressure about the students who are winning and the students who are not winning. And so it's really neat, and it takes the pressure off a lot of students who are afraid of guessing in class because everyone's guessing on their device. And so that can be really nice. And I've had students really react well to this. I've made 65 Kahoots, and I find that they're an invaluable tool for review, and the students really love it. Sometimes I open up class with a Kahoot on the homework from the night before. Other times I end class with a Kahoot. My students call it Kahoot and Scoot, and they get really excited when we do Kahoot and Scoot day. So I highly recommend you try this. It's really not complicated. It's basically the same as doing Google Forms. You just fill out the answers and the students will pick it. It's really nice. Socrative is something that I don't use that often, but it's similar to a survey, and you upload your questions and you get your quick results. So like Kahoot, it shows results immediately. Another thing that I've been working on is Pear Deck, where you can add questions or assessments to slides. So if you teach a lot from slides, which I do a lot over the summer when I'm teaching online, you can use either a PowerPoint or Google Present and add questions and assessments to those slides. So it's a really neat tool, and I suggest that you look it up because it's really interesting. Another thing I do, and I have my students do, is screencasting. So I find that the easiest way to do this is to use QuickTime. And so when you're in your QuickTime, you go to File, New Screen Recording, and then you save it to your desktop, and then you can share it on either a private channel or a link on YouTube, or upload the file to Google Drive. And I find that this is really helpful even for students. I've had students create review videos for grammar, and I just had students create videos of their screen and do a Catullus poem with pictures. And they have a great time making videos, and they love it when you make videos too. I make videos sometimes if students miss part of school or they miss a certain concept so that I can review it with them. And so that's been really fun. Also, you can use Screencast-O-Matic, which if you don't have QuickTime, is a great option. The free option directly uploads to YouTube, and you can create a YouTube channel or a link or an unlisted link to put it up there. You could also get the paid version, which allows for video editing options. So if you're someone who's going to do this a lot, or you're afraid of, you want to do a video, but you're afraid that maybe you'll mess up, it's a really good option. And that is what we have today. So if you have any questions, if you have any ideas you want to share, please let me know. My name is Maureen Lamb. You can follow me on YouTube, you can follow me on Twitter, and please feel free to use the different technologies listed in this presentation. Are there any questions? Well, thank you very much and have a great night.